The first couple of properties we're going to check out underneath our shadows are the shadow type and the shadow strength. Now, I'm going to be using our sunlight for our example, which is a directional light that is placed pretty distantly behind us. And here I have a simple box in my level that is just casting a shadow. So with the sunlight selected, we can come over here to the inspector, take a look underneath the light properties, and for starters, let's just set our shadow type to no shadows. This is really easy, and there's not much left for me to talk about. If you set this to no shadows, you're not casting shadows.
Yep. Quite simple, and it's actually quite fast at this point.
It really is.
If you look at our stats,
okay.
If you look, we're currently playing our game. We've got draw calls at 56, which means it's actually making 56 draw calls to draw this particular scene.
Now, if we come back under our shadow type, we can choose between hard shadows and soft shadows. And the name really says it all. If we switch this to hard shadows, we get fairly crisp shadows laid down on the ground. If we switch to soft shadows, you'll see there's a little bit of blurring around the edges. Now, soft shadows are a bit more expensive. They're going to be your higher calculation. And you can see, though, as soon as we turn on shadows, like, check it out, with shadows off, our draw calls are only 56. As soon as we activate those, we just about double. So we get a whole lot more calculation just to draw these shadows.
Right, and then when we go to soft shadow, we get one additional draw call.
Now, why is that?
Because it has to calculate the blurring in with our shadow as well.
And there you go. Now, the other property I want to discuss here is our shadow strength. Also a pretty intuitive little property. If we leave this at 1, we have fully dark shadows. Now, they're not black, but the reason they're not black is if we go under Edit and take a look under the render settings, our ambient light has a little bit of intensity. So just for the sake of this example, I'll set our ambient light completely over to black, so it's not adding any additional lighting to our scene. If we go back over to the sun, a shadow strength of 1 means completely black shadows. Now I can take that strength and start to bleed it back down, and you'll notice our shadow getting lighter and lighter all the way down to 0, where we again have no shadows. But watch out, though, because if you check out our draw calls, they're still being calculated. They're just not visible, so it's not something you'd ever really want to do. But if you need to soften your shadows up, if they're too dramatic, you can pull them back as opposed to adding more ambient light into your scene.
Right. Now, this reiterates a point that we brought up in the last video. With a single light casting a shadow, we've doubled our draw calls. If we were to add a second light in here, and we added or turned on shadows for it as well, we would then increase the draw calls again by the number of objects that are casting shadows. And this is going to go up for every additional light that you add shadows to.
That's right.
And also got to remember, though, that is only possible if you're using the deferred rendering path.
Right, which comes back to a pro-only feature, which is also kind of moot because these real-time shadows are pro-only anyway.
Right. But if you do have pro and you are using deferred lighting, you have to keep this in mind while using real-time shadows.
All right, so that is a quick rundown through the 2 shadow types we have available, and of course a look at our shadow strength, and that will wrap things up for this video. Thanks a lot.